But first, when the president wasn't brushing back reporter questions with extremely racist responses, he was telling more lies about a number of coronavirus issues. He said that the numbers are coming down very rapidly all throughout the country, by the way.
That's a lie.
White House data contradicts that. We'll have the new numbers for you in a moment. They do not reflect what the president said. He has suggested repeatedly that children are in the clear. Yet the CDC's own findings prove otherwise. He said that America leads the world in testing. False. Iceland, Italy, Germany, and Canada all test more per person. And he echoed his favorite false claim, continuing to repeat his infamous March 6th statement that anyone who wants a test can get one.
Anybody right now and yesterday, anybody that needs a test gets a test. They're there. They have the test. And the tests are beautiful. Anybody that needs a test gets a test.
If people want to get tested, they get tested. We have the greatest capacity in the world. Not even close. If people want to get tested, they get tested. But for the most part, they shouldn't want to get tested.
That's not true. And his claim on the U.S. death rate from the virus was wildly off base.
I think one of the things we're most proud of is this just came out, deaths per 100,000 people, death. So deaths per 100,000 people. Germany and the United States are at the lowest rung of that ladder, meaning low is a positive, not a negative. Germany and the United States are the two best in deaths per 100,000 people, which, frankly, to me, that's perhaps the most important number there is.
Except it's wrong.
Okay, so I want to connect on just the last thing the president said here. Willie, he said that's perhaps the most important stat that we have. And I guess I'd agree with him. His only problem is, he said we're tied for first with Germany. Close.
No.
Okay, not that close. If you actually look at the Johns Hopkins information here, these are the worst mortality rates in the world, Willie, out of 140 countries. I'm not good in math, okay? I'm not a Harvard boy. I went to Alabama, but I think 140 minus 9 still is 131. So we're not first in the world. Out of the 140 countries that Johns Hopkins University is following, we rank 131 in mortality rates. And you combine that with what he said about this mysterious childhood illness and says, well, at least they're all recovering. His own testing director had to say, no, Mr. President, that's wrong. Now, you get what he said about testing, and they had signs, the best in the world. We're not. We're still behind. Again, as Mika said, we're like 5th in the world on that, making some progress, but still far behind. You look at all these claims. It was another afternoon press conference, another pack of lies from a man who's told 18,000 lies. And it's so interesting, Willie, that you have all of these anti-Trump posers who pull out their fainting couches anytime anybody in the media makes a mistake. And yet those fainting couches are not used. They certainly don't worry about the president's 18,000 lies. Are these lies during the worst crisis the United States has faced since World War II? Yesterday's just an astounding blizzard of lies from the president of the United States.
Yeah, and easily demonstrable lies, too. The president yesterday showed he's living in a parallel universe where he's trying to wish away, again, a global pandemic. You can't do it. We have the numbers. We can show you that we're not first in the world in death rate. We're 131st in death rate. He said on testing, we have met the moment and we have prevailed. If that doesn't say to you, I want to just turn the corner on this and pretend it's not happening, nothing else does. He's wrong on the facts. He was wrong on almost everything he said yesterday, including on testing. including on the death rates and including on the number of cases in this country, which I think is really important because he wants it to appear by the words he expresses that this thing is going away, that we've got it under control. Cases, as we've said many times, are down in coastal cities and places like New York City, but we're showing new evidence from his own task force that shows it's popping up across the country, just as many people predicted. Again, data from his own task force showing that, not us.
Well, Willie, and that's the astounding thing here, is that when we talk about on this show the need for America to reopen, but reopen safely, as I say all the time, I'm not talking about Nancy Pelosi's standards that she put out there. I'm not talking about
politics.
The Nation magazine's standards. I'm not talking about the Young Marxist League of Greater Manhattan standards for reopening the government. I'm talking about Donald Trump's own standards that Donald Trump set out a couple of weeks ago. It's his own standards we're going by. These numbers, for the most part, are usually his own numbers. And yet, time and time again, he's wildly off base. Time and time again, he's wrong. And as you say, time and time again, he's wishing this away. It's you know, I wrote a column in the Washington Post a couple weeks ago talking about the year of magical thinking. Borrowed that from a Joan Didion memoir. Well, he continues this year of magical thinking, even saying that this isn't going to come back in the fall, when in fact just about every person of science, just about every doctor that knows what they're talking about, healthcare expert says this fall will likely be the worst wave. And in some models, the fall will actually be worse than what we've just endured.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.